Hey, this is the 100 in 100 where we review 100 VR games in 100 days. We're going to take a look at VR Mini Golf by Cloudlands. VR Mini Golf is one of the better VR mini golf games that we've seen in virtual reality, and we had a good time reviewing this one. The game is simple enough and it follows the normal mini golf theme. Put the ball in the hole in as few strokes as possible, and that's exactly what you do in VR Mini Golf, with the added bonus of being able to create your own levels and interact with some other creator tools that add a nice additional element that we think that you'll enjoy. In our VR Gear game reviews, we like to cover as much of the game and all the different aspects that are important to you so that you can make a good decision before you try it out or buy the game for yourself. Let's jump right in and see what VR Mini Golf is all about. The first thing we want to talk about is getting up and running with VR Mini Golf. This game will cost you $19.99 if you buy it as a standalone title. We accessed it through a Viveport Infinity subscription, and so it was free to download and try. This is the type of game that might not be worth the $20 that they're asking, but you'll probably agree that it's worth trying if it's part of a subscription package that you have. The download file for VR Mini Golf comes in at about 1 gigabyte, so you're looking at around a half hour on the high end to download this with a reasonably fast internet connection. Installation is pretty automatic if you're downloading it through the Steam store or through Viveport. And after the download and the installation is complete, it's easy enough to get running in VR. It's very similar to the other titles. There's 18 or 19 different holes to choose from, and you can select one at a time, or you can have randomly ordered holes presented to you as you play through the game. Overall, jumping into the game, getting up and running is pretty straightforward with VR Mini Golf. This game is a casual sports game similar to a lot of the mobile phone games that you'll get around golf. You won't find the levels getting progressively harder, but there are definitely levels that are more difficult than others, and so it will challenge you quite a bit if you play all 18 or 19 holes. For this game, the player perspective is first person, and you really don't see much of yourself in the game. So maybe it's your perspective is as a golf club. All you see in the game is the golf club that you are swinging. You don't need two controllers. You can play the entire game with just one. And there isn't much that you'll see as far as your own hands or feet or arms or anything of that nature. And so you're really detached from the experience in this specific perspective. As far as theme and story goes, VR Mini Golf doesn't really have a theme other than get the ball in the hole. There isn't a theme to the mini golf course like you'll see in the real world, where mini golf courses will be designed around a certain theme or a story. This is a very basic mini golf course that includes obstacles, of course, but there is no theme to it and there is no story mode to it. It's straight golf, no nonsense. Get in, sink your putts, and get out. We were quite surprised at the variety of controls that you could use in this game to move around, view your scorecard, or even navigate to the ball when it moved down the course. In order to move to the ball, you simply pull the trigger. If you'd like to see your scorecard, you squeeze the grip. And if you'd like to teleport to somewhere other than your ball, you can aim with the joystick or the touchpad and press and release, and you will teleport to that location. For such a simple game, the controls were actually pretty refreshing to have options for. Hitting the golf ball, on the other hand, was simply flicking the wrist, swinging your arm and hitting it as you would. That doesn't mean that it's easier, it just means that it's simple as it should be. But the controls were actually surprisingly good. Now, you normally wouldn't associate music and sound with golfing. Most golfing is done in silence, but this game is an exception to that. You get to hear some nice instrumental tunes, a different track for every single hole, and it's pretty refreshing to have this type of music playing in the background while you golf and try to concentrate on hitting your putts. There is the option to have no music at all, so you can have it be silent just like a pro mini golf course, if those exist. And the music actually helped us relax a little bit so we wouldn't get so upset when we would triple bogey. The player movement in this game was the most disappointing aspect of VR Mini Golf. When you would move to a new location on the course, you didn't get to pick your orientation. The game would pick that for you, which was disorienting. It didn't make you terribly motion sick, but it was frustrating not to be able to pick the direction that you were facing. Because of this type of motion, you find yourself turning around in the real world. And if you have a tethered VR headset, that means your cable could be slowly wrapping itself around you, which is never a good thing. Finally, the putter that you hold in your hand and the way that you move your arm in relation to hitting the ball, it was not very natural at all. And it's actually quite difficult to pull something like this off, because being a good putter means that you understand the force necessary to hit the ball a certain distance. The problem with the physics of swinging the club was that the club would be exaggerated in its movement visually, and the ball's response to that movement wasn't predictable at all. In fact, the ball would go flying really far, or it would only go a few inches, and it was difficult to know what type of swing would result in what type of ball movement. And so as the player perspective goes, it was actually the most frustrating part of the game, trying to navigate how to move around in this space and be successful at the game. As far as motion sickness and kinetosis goes, this game is neither good nor bad, but the movement engine and the way that you were placed in different locations on the map, the way that you would move around the course was very disorienting, to say the least. We didn't experience any motion sickness as a result, and so VR Mini Golf will not get a horrible score as far as motion sickness goes, but we weren't terribly impressed with the movement that the game required and the movement of the player that was given to us. The environment of this game and the immersion that we experienced has a lot of room to improve. We never felt like we were actually on a mini golf course, even though when you look around you would clearly say, hey, I'm on a mini golf course. The reason for that is because of the game mechanics and the player movement and the response of the putter and the ball to our input. As a result, that broke the illusion. The environment and the immersion was also suffering from that, and we didn't really feel like we could get into the game as much as we had wanted to. All right, so let's look at the score on the different categories. For theme and story, we are giving VR Mini Golf a 6 out of 10. And this isn't because of the normal gameplay modes. This is because of the custom level creator that you're able to use. This actually added a lot of value to the game that the main title was lacking. So we give it a 6 out of 10 for theme and story. For controls, we give VR Mini Golf a 7 out of 10. This is because there were a lot of options and different ways to move about the golf course, as well as interact with the ball and your environment. For music and sound, we are giving VR Mini Golf a 7 out of 10. This has to do with the different audio tracks on each one of the levels, as well as the sound of the club hitting the ball. That was convincing as well. So a 7 out of 10 for sound and music. Player movement, we are giving VR Mini Golf a 2 out of 10. And as we said, this game was frustrating to move around in. You couldn't pick the direction that you would look. You had to accept what was given to you. And this became very frustrating as we moved through the course. So a 2 out of 10 is what VR Mini Golf gets for player movement. For motion sickness, this game gets a 6 out of 10. And the reason we don't give this game a perfect score, even though we didn't experience motion sickness, is because there was a lot of motion frustration related to player movement. So a 6 out of 10 for kinetosis or motion sickness. For environment immersion, we are giving VR Mini Golf a 4 out of 10. There was a lot of areas where this game could have improved. There could have been additional visuals that would help add to the immersion. There could have been better physics with the game mechanics as well as player movement. And so there wasn't the level of immersion that we were hoping for, and the environment was less than what we desired. And so a 4 out of 10 for environment and immersion. The overall score for VR Mini Golf is a 5.3 out of 10. We were very hopeful that this game would be a lot of fun to play. There were some great ideas around the game, but the execution was lacking. There was a lot to be desired when it comes to the mechanics and the physics of playing mini golf in VR. It's a difficult thing to pull off, and it will remain difficult and not executed perfectly until we see something that's a little bit better. So that's our review of VR Mini Golf by Cloudlands. Go ahead and hit that subscribe button and click the notification bell so that you can receive a notification when we review another VR game review tomorrow as part of our 100 VR games in 100 days. Thanks for watching, and we will see you in the next one.